The most important battle in British history is one most people have never heard of. In 937 AD, England did not feel permanent. It did not feel inevitable. It felt new, fragile, like something that could still disappear. And then came the news. A Viking king, a Scottish king, and a Briton king had joined forces and were marching south together. Not as rivals, not as enemies, but as allies. And their purpose was simple: destroy King Æthelstan and erase the kingdom he had built. To understand why this moment mattered, you have to understand who Æthelstan was. He was the grandson of Alfred the Great, the king who had held the line when Viking armies threatened to overwhelm everything. But Alfred had only survived. Æthelstan went further. He took what had been defended and turned it into something unified. By 927 AD, he had captured York, the last great Viking stronghold in England. And for the first time in history, the land was not divided into competing kingdoms. It was one. One king, one rule, one idea. England. But unity creates a different kind of danger. Because when everything is held together, everything can be broken at once. To the north, Constantine of Scotland watched carefully, measuring the rise of a power too close to his borders. To the west, Owain of Strathclyde ruled a kingdom already under pressure, aware that English expansion might one day swallow it completely. And across the sea, Olaf Guthfrithson of Dublin saw something else. Opportunity. These were men who had fought each other before. Men who did not trust each other. Men who had built their power through conflict. But Æthelstan forced them into something rare: cooperation. Because if they did not act now, there might never be another chance. So they gathered their forces. Ships crossed the sea, heavy with Viking warriors hardened by years of raiding and war. Armies marched down from the north, disciplined and determined. Fighters came from the west, defending the last traces of independence. This was not just an army. It was a convergence of fears, a final attempt to stop something new before it could take root. And as they moved south, they brought with them a single possibility: that England could end before it truly began. Word spread ahead of them. Villages emptied, farms were abandoned. Messengers rode without rest, carrying warnings from one settlement to the next. People did not know where the army was, only that it was coming. When the news reached Æthelstan, there was no time to hesitate. He could wait behind walls and risk being surrounded. He could delay and give the alliance time to grow even stronger. Or he could march north and face everything at once. He chose to march. It was the most dangerous decision he could make, and the only one that gave him control. Beside him rode his younger brother, Edmund, not yet king, not yet tested, but about to be shaped by what was coming. Behind them came the feared, not a professional army, not soldiers who had trained their whole lives, but ordinary men, farmers, blacksmiths, landholders, men who had been called away from their homes and given a simple task: stand, fight, hold. They marched, knowing something most armies never fully understand. If they lost, there would be no home to return to. Somewhere in the north, the two forces drew closer. We do not know exactly where it happened. The name Brunanburh survives. The place does not. But we know the kind of ground: open land, rolling hills, fields worked by people who had no reason to believe history was about to pass through their lives. The morning was likely cold. Mist clung to the ground. Armor felt heavier in the damp air. Men stood in formation, adjusting grips on shields and spears, saying little, conserving energy, listening to the quiet. And then the quiet ended. Movement in the distance, the shape of an army forming through the haze, standards rising, voices carrying across the field. Then noise, then impact. There were no speeches, no final words, no moment of hesitation, just collision. Shield met shield, with a force that echoed across the land. Spears thrust forward, searching for openings. Blades struck wood, tore iron, and flesh. The battle became immediate, personal. There was no distance between enemies. Only breath, only effort, only survival. The coalition struck hard. Viking warriors drove forward aggressively, used to breaking lines through sheer force. Scottish formations held steady, resisting pressure with discipline. Strathclyde fighters moved where needed, reinforcing, adapting, holding the structure together. For a time it worked. Æthelstan's line bent under the weight. The pressure was constant, relentless, and for a moment it may have seemed like numbers would decide everything. But something held. Not strength alone, not luck, unity. Æthelstan's army was not a collection of forces. It was one force. Orders moved, adjustments were made. Gaps were filled not by chance, but by design. And slowly, the battle began to change. But not all at once, not in a single dramatic moment, but gradually, quietly. The kind of change you only notice when it is already happening. Fatigue began to spread. Shields felt heavier. Spears were harder to lift. Movements slowed. Coordination weakened. And then it happened. A section of the Allied line gave way. Just slightly. Just enough. But in a shield wall, there is no such thing as a small failure. One gap becomes pressure. Pressure becomes movement. Movement becomes collapse. And collapse spreads. What had been a unified advance became disjointed, then unstable, then broken. And once that happened, everything changed. Because an army only exists while it holds together. The moment it breaks, it becomes something else. Men began to fall back, then to turn, then to run. And once running begins, it spreads faster than any command can stop. Æthelstan's forces advanced, step by step at first, then faster, then with certainty. The battle was no longer a contest. It was a collapse. The field turned into a pursuit. Men were cut down as they fled. Warriors who had crossed seas and marched great distances now ran through unfamiliar land, trying to escape something that would not stop. Leaders fell. War bands disappeared. The alliance that had come together in rare unity dissolved into fragments. By the time the sun began to fall, the fighting was over. The noise faded, the movement stopped, and the field was left with what all battlefields are left with. Silence. The invasion had failed. The alliance had shattered, and England had survived. The battle would later be called the Battle of Brunanburh. But in that moment, there was no legend, no celebration, only exhaustion, only loss, and the understanding of how close everything had come to ending. This was not just a victory. It was a survival, a proof that England could withstand not just attack, but destruction. That unity could hold under the greatest possible strain. That something new, something fragile, could endure when everything was thrown against it. Without this battle, England might not exist as it does today. It could have fractured. It could have been divided again. It could have disappeared before it ever truly formed. Instead, it held. And after that day, something changed. England was no longer just an idea. It was a reality. And the strangest part of all is this. There is no single place you can stand and say, "It happened here." No monument known to everyone. No widely remembered date. Just a record, a poem. And the quiet truth that for one single day, in 937 AD, everything balanced on the edge of collapse and did not fall. History didn't just move forward. On that day, it was decided.